you ever noticed that the religious love to claim to have evidence, but the second you ask them to present it, they've got absolutely nothing? Or how they seem to think that they've got atheist friends when anyone with half a brain would look at the things that they're saying and laugh. Both of those things come together in this one video as we look at religious evidence and how they should present it to skeptics. Enjoy! Today, we're on a channel called Reboot, which looks kind of like it's some kind of religious camp presentation, where host Alycia Wood tries to explain how to provide religious evidence to a skeptical audience. What religious evidence? You mean that stuff they don't actually have? Of course, because this turns into a giant mess where she tries to pretend standard apologetics somehow means something useful, and atheists are something that they are demonstrably not. You know, standard stupid theism. I'd like to say it never gets old, but yeah, it does. It really does. The one thing it never gets is impressive. So here we go again, down the stupidity rabbit hole. Geronimo!
Grab one.
Okay, I'll grab this one. How do you give evidence of God's existence to skeptics? That's a really, really good one because this is something I wrestle with. I speak a lot with non-Christians.
Yeah. I don't know how much I'd believe that, but I'll let it go for the moment. Because I've seen a lot of theists who claim to speak to non-Christians, and it's really painfully obvious that they never do. Or if they do, they are talking to the low-information atheist who has no clue what religion is all about and has no direct experience with religious beliefs or skepticism. Now, she could be right. I have no idea, so I'll kind of give her the benefit of the doubt. I'm just saying that I don't see the religious reaching out to people like me. People who know their scam and can counter it with ease. You know, the people who actually have expectations beyond blind faith. But yeah, let's see where she's going.
And I've tried different avenues and different things. I think Dan actually gave several of them that I think that are good. The origins of the universe, the fine-tuning of the universe, morality, these kind of reasons I think are all valid.
And if that's the best you can do, then you've lost before you've even begun, because those are not valid. We've taken on every single one of those apologetics here, and we've shown that they are all wholly irrational. Because absolutely none of those things actually provide evidence that your claims are factually valid in the real world. And that's where religion completely falls apart. We are not going to allow for double standards. If you're going to talk about something that is supposedly true in reality, and that's the kind of thing that you're claiming, then we are going to expect that you prove it using the same methods required for any other claim made about reality. Absolutely no other claim gets to go, well, I've got faith. Nothing gets to put together a philosophical syllogism to prove atmospheric models or migration patterns. That's not how it works, and we're not making an exception for you. So you're going to have to do a whole lot better than that if you expect us to take you seriously. Can you? Let's see.
And are all really good reasons that point to the existence of something. As the person who sent in the question after his talk, it doesn't necessarily prove Christianity.
But it doesn't actually prove anything, and that's the problem. All of these arguments are made to appeal to emotion, not intellect. Ultimately, this tactic by the religious falls under the umbrella of the appeal to common sense, a logical fallacy which tries to insist that its conclusions are just common sense when they're obviously anything but. It's why we don't take these supposed common sense platitudes as automatic truth. It's why we want to dig deeper and take a look at the core of these claims, and the religious don't want to do that. Because if they do that, it's pretty clear that their claims fall apart entirely. But let's continue.
But it does raises doubt to exist to a world without any kind of divine being at all.
No, it doesn't. And this is another point that has to be made. Christians, and by extension Muslims and Hindus and all the rest, they don't get anywhere by suggesting that there could possibly, maybe, if you squint just right, be some kind of supernatural deity type thing out there, maybe somewhere. That's not the claim that they're making. They are claiming that there is a single, very specific, very real deity that has very exacting characteristics that they specifically worship. It doesn't get them anywhere to say, well, maybe, kinda, sorta. They need to prove their very specific deity or they've failed. It's like saying, well, there are animals living in the woods, therefore Bigfoot exists. We're looking at the actual claims that you're making, and in this case, Christians are saying that the Christian God is real. They need to prove that the Christian God is real conclusively. It doesn't do them any good to show that maybe some kind of God of some undefined kind might possibly, perhaps, kinda, maybe, sort of exist somewhere, maybe, kinda. That doesn't do them any good. That's not what they're claiming. They are saying that their very specific God is real. They have to prove that. When do you think they're going to do that? I haven't seen it.
So I think I point to a lot of those reasons to give demonstration that there is some kind of being out there, that it's completely rational to believe that there is something out there.
Except it's not. The time to believe in something, anything, is when it has been demonstrated with objectively verifiable evidence and not 1 second before. It doesn't matter how you might feel about a particular religious belief. The time to accept anything is when it has been shown to be reasonable and rational to accept that it's actually there at all. And you have gotten nowhere remotely close to any kind of a God. You just haven't. And that's why every single one of these philosophical, common sense, fallacious arguments that they use fails completely. If X then God doesn't prove a thing. It only proves that you're not that smart. The whole therefore God nonsense is just stupid. It really is. You only get to say therefore Bigfoot when you can throw a carcass on the table. Until then, you're full of crap.
But I think another thing that I also do is I also don't think I always need to be the one to give evidence. I also look at my non-Christian friends and say, what is the evidence that you have that atheism is true?
Atheism is not making any truth claims at all. We come right back to the religious thinking everyone is just like they are. Atheism is the lack of belief in the claims made by the religious, full stop. We are not saying that there are no gods. We are just saying, we don't believe you. You have not made your case. And since we're playing with Bigfoot this time around, let's keep going with that. I am not telling Bigfoot believers that there is no Bigfoot. There could be out there in the woods someplace. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I'm just not going to believe it until they have proven their claims to be factually and demonstrably true. And the same goes for Christians. If you want me to believe in your God, you need to bring me absolutely undeniable, incontrovertible evidence that you are correct. And you haven't done that. You haven't even gotten close. You're not really even trying. We're not telling you that you're wrong. We're telling you that you have to prove that you're right, and you can't do that. This tells me that she's really not talking to any actual skeptical atheists, because they would have explained these facts to her, and she doesn't seem to get it.
right? I spend my life speaking to people about the evidence for Christianity. What is the evidence for atheism?
There isn't any, because it isn't a claim. And if you honestly ever spoke to anyone non-religious, you'd know that. Because that's what this video is about, convincing skeptics, right? That's what your title says, right? Did you read that before you made your video? But you really don't care about skeptics. You're only out there talking to people who are already swigging your Kool-Aid. You aren't concerned with the truth. If you were, you wouldn't keep making such an absurd fool of yourself. You'd get out there and have rational conversations with actual skeptics who aren't going to take anything on faith. But you don't have anything else to offer, do you? And that's why you only talk to crazy gullible people.
And the answer I usually get from my atheistic friends is, well, we are rejecting a belief, so therefore we don't have to have evidence for ours. We are just saying it's a non-belief. Atheism is non-belief. But you're saying you are an atheist, so you are believing that there is no God. Our words have values to them. They have truth statements to them.
But you don't understand what words mean. The prefix a added to any word means that you reject the word that follows. Theism is the belief in a God. It's not the God itself. It is the belief in a God. We reject the belief in a God. It doesn't say that we reject the God. That's a completely different thing. It says that we reject the belief because it is unjustified. The language isn't that hard when you just stop to think about it. But the religious can't handle that, because they have nothing intelligent to say in their own defense, so they're just looking to go on the attack. It's a lot easier than having to provide evidence for something that simply has none. So they try to redefine atheism to mean something that it simply doesn't mean. She just did it right there, and she knows what it really means, but she can't work with that, so she just made something else up and told people that they had to believe because it makes her job easier. And that's utterly dishonest. It really is. You don't just get to redefine the position of your opponent to make it easier for you to attack it. You have to actually deal with reality. Give it a shot, Alycia.
And so oftentimes I try and get answers from them. What is the evidence for atheism? Not the evidence against Christianity, against Islam, against Hinduism, against whatever. What is the evidence that you have that your belief is true?
We don't need any because we're not making a claim. You are. Therefore, you need to provide evidence that the claims that you are demonstrably making are true. That's how this works. The one making the claims provides the proof for those claims. You are engaged in flogging a straw man because you cannot keep up your end of the bargain. And the religious will cry, "Well, that's not fair." Too bad. Life's not fair. Suck it up. If you don't want to have to defend your side, don't be on that side. If you can't provide evidence for your claims, don't be making those claims. It's not that hard to understand, because the reality is not everyone is like you. Not everyone holds beliefs based on faith. Not everyone is making irrational and indefensible claims. You are responsible for yourself. It doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. What she's doing here is a clear case of shifting the burden of proof, because there's nothing else that she can do. That's why religion fails.
And so that's one of the questions that I oftentimes pose to people. I haven't really gotten a great answer on that yet, I'll tell you now.
Because it's a stupid question. You're dodging your responsibility to provide answers for yourself. You know that everyone can see that, right? Well, everyone but the glassy-eyed smooth brains sitting in your audience, paying you money to get up on stage and lie to them. Those people are entranced because they're dumb. That's not really something to be proud of.
So maybe you guys will have better luck with that, but I just generally don't get good answers from my skeptic friends as to the evidence for why they believe. And it's interesting because they think we have a blind faith. But I often wonder who is the blind faith after all. So I think I would do origins. I think I do fine-tuning. I look at morality. I ask people the evidence that they have.
And all of that is a recipe for utter failure. I want to point out that the title of her video is, How Do You Give Evidence of God to Skeptics? I don't know. When do you think you're going to get around to that? Because so far, she hasn't said one thing about any actual, demonstrable, verifiable evidence for God. And the religious fall into that a lot, if you notice, because I don't think they have the slightest clue what evidence actually is. When we ask them for evidence, what we expect to receive is empirical evidence. Empirical evidence, or objective evidence, is the information received by means of the senses, particularly by observation and documentation of patterns and behavior through experimentation. It is, by its very nature, demonstrable. It exists without regard to your feelings or interpretations or wishes or desires. Nothing else will do, and because the religious have absolutely none of that, they have to turn to more devious and dishonest methods to keep their money rolling in. And they wonder why we're not impressed with any of this. I'm not. Are you?
But I think also another thing that I do is I also point to our inner desires for certain things in life, whether it's inner desires for fulfillment, whether it's inner desires to connect with something greater, something bigger than us. And why do we have these desires for something that we never seem to find fulfillment for in life? And Dan touched on that as well.
I don't have those desires. In fact, if you go and talk to the skeptics, those people she wants to pretend are her friends, like, Andy Bannister does, these people don't have friends. They really don't. I don't think they have any friends at all, but that's neither here nor there. The only atheist friends they seem to have are the ones in their heads. They don't actually talk to atheists. Those are stories they make up to tell their gullible followers so they can get a paycheck. I bet you won't find any actual atheists who desire to connect with something supernatural. Because from every shred of evidence that we have, there is nothing supernatural to connect to. There is no reason to think these things are real. So the religious, because they're really immature children who desperately want imaginary friends, they want things that aren't true, and therefore, well, everyone else does, of course. Everyone is just like they are, even though we're not.
I think those are a lot of the things that I look at and then specifically give evidence for Christianity.
Where is that evidence? Because nothing you've said, nothing any religious apologist says, is evidence. None of it. Nothing at all. Absolutely nothing she has said qualifies. It's not what we are looking for. The kind of things that she is saying are laughably absurd. That's really the problem that the religious have. They feel that they have to answer the questions of the skeptics, but they've got nothing intelligent to answer them with. Therefore, they redefine what skepticism is, redefine the kind of evidence that's expected, and pretend, because that's really all they can do, that they have anything whatsoever intelligent to say. But they don't. They just don't. And that's why virtually every one of these videos on YouTube are not theists talking to skeptics. They're theists talking to other theists. You notice how that works, right? It isn't Christians walking into the lion's den. It's Christians hanging out in their own comforting echo chambers and telling the rest of the teddy bear hugging crowd what it's really like on the outside. Except I don't think that these people have ever really been outside. Not really. They have no atheist friends, and they have no real experience with skeptics. Because skeptics would shred these pathetic little snowflakes. It's why they're terrified to talk to real skeptics who know their tactics and know how to punch right through them. Alycia is no one to be impressed with. She's someone who should be pitied. Or her audience, if she, as I suspect, is just scamming them for a paycheck. Because that's entirely common in the religious community. These people have to know that what they're saying is complete and utter bullshit. Or they've got mental and maturity problems, take your pick. In any case, Nothing that they have said, nothing that any of them have ever said, is worth anything more than laughing at. Because that's what religion is. A complete and utter joke. But it's really not that funny, is it? It's just pathetic.